So this is a vehicle I've been really excited to drive for a while now. A little over a year ago, Alfa Romeo invited us out to take a sneak peek at the all-new Tonale. Of course, we got to look around the Tonale. We got to check out the interior, but we did not get to drive it. So this is the first time I'm able to drive the Tonale. I have driven the new Dodge Hornet a few times now, which is basically a cousin car, a sister car to this, the Tonale, and I've got review videos out on that experience. But even then, both times I drove the Hornet, I did not drive the one with this engine setup. So I'm really excited to dive in. Let's just get into it. So for 2024, the Alfa Romeo Tonale has 3 trims available. You have the Spirit at the base, you have the TI in the middle, and the Veloce, pardon my Italian, but that means fast, and that is our top of the line, and that is what we're driving here. And of course, if this vehicle succeeds, I do see Alfa Romeo adding more trims, adding more engine options in the future. We'll just have to stay tuned for that. But let's go ahead and take a look at the exterior design here and get on with the review of this one. All right, taking a look at the exterior here. First off, the paint color is Grigio or gray, Ascari metallic. It's a decent color for this. Definitely doesn't stand out too much. That being said, I do like this thing in black, but there's not a lot of other colors that I've seen, maybe except for the green that I really liked. So Alfa says this is intended for a young, metropolitan, and dynamic customer. So they designed it with a distinctive, sensual, and forward-looking design. Quite frankly, if Alfa Romeo has anything going for it, it is a beautiful design with a design language that has carried over from 4 decades now. We do have the full LED headlights with the 3x3 look. We have that triangle Alfa grille with the Alfa Romeo badge, a very unique badge displayed right up there on the grille. A very sculpted hood that comes straight over the headlights and grille. A very premium look to that. You have the front fascia with a wide opening and slits on the side for an aerodynamic look. On the front fenders, you do have the name of the trim, which is the Veloce. Your side mirrors are gloss black. You do have an Italian flag embedded in there, as well as the turn signal, and these things do power fold on lock. Your door handles are body color door handles, and they do have the keyless entry function where you can just put your hand in and unlock, or a button on it to lock them. You have gloss black on the wheel arches and along the bottom frame. The full cabin from the A pillar to the B to the C pillar is a nice sporty look. You have a very aggressively raked rear end with a bit of a spoiler. We have really nice full LED taillights that extend the width of the Tonale. And again, that Alfa Romeo badge and Tonale badge back here on the back. Our rear fascia also has gloss black surround with 2 really large exhaust tips, giving it definitely a sporty look. These wheels are the traditional 5-hole alloy wheels, and they are 20" by 8" with Michelin tires on here. Super aggressive, super sporty, and keeping with the Alfa Romeo heritage look. This crossover does not have roof rails on it. And one last detail that I really like is this Alfa Romeo snake badge that has turned into the male end of a plug with a little electric bolt to let you know that this is a plug-in vehicle. It's a plug-in hybrid. We'll talk about the engine under the hood in just a minute. But first, let's talk about the full dimensions of the Tonale. All right, and this compact design of this compact crossover has a full length of 178.3 inches, a wheelbase of 103.8 inches. You have a width of 72.4 inches and a height of 63 inches. And again, I really do like the Alfa Romeo design here, but I have been kind of a fanboy of Alfa Romeo for a long time, even before they were in the States. I guess that's what happens when you grow up on watching Top Gear. But for the week of me driving this, I didn't get as many looks or comments as I would think I would. Maybe it's just the class of vehicle that it is, that it's less approachable. But when I drove the Dart, I got stopped constantly asked questions about what it was, people really liking the design. So that also could have been about the color. But again, I really love the design in this dark gray. It definitely doesn't stand out a whole lot, but I think it looks really good on the outside. We'll check out the interior in just a second, but first, let's check out the cargo volume. All right, we popped the hatch, and it is a power lifting hatch, and there's a pretty decent amount of space back here for a compact crossover. You get 22.9 cubic feet of cargo volume. You can fold these seats down and expand that cargo volume. There is a pass-through in the back seats that we'll look at. You do get a cover so nobody sees what you're carrying. There is a shelf back here that you can lift up. There's a little bit of extra storage, and then what looks like a compartment for the battery, but no spare tire back here. So not a ton to look at, but let's go ahead and close it up with a push of a button. And then we'll go and check out what's under the hood. All right, so let's dive into it. This is a bit interesting and a little bit complicated of a setup. So we have an advanced hybrid system that uses a 1.3 liter multi-air turbocharged 4-cylinder engine and a 15.5 kilowatt hour lithium ion battery to propel this crossover. Now this is all-wheel drive. The gas engine itself drives the front wheels while the electric engine drives the rear wheels, if I got that correct. The rear axle of the Tonale is powered by a 90 kilowatt electric motor capable of producing 184 pound-feet of torque on its own. The total setup here combined produces 285 horsepower and 350 pound-feet of torque, which should net you a 0 to 60 around 6 seconds. We'll test that out for sure. And like I said, this is a plug-in hybrid system, so you can plug it in, charge that battery to full, and drive just over 30 miles in all EV mode. You also do have a sort of drive mode feature, which we'll talk more about as we drive it, where you have an e-save mode where you can drive it in gasoline only and build up that battery or save the battery. And lastly, that's all helped by the 6-speed automatic transmission. Your towing capacity is only 2,000 pounds, which is probably fine. Not many people are going to tow with this thing. And while looking under the hood, you can see the Alfa Romeo badge on the cover here, but you also see parts with Mopar, which definitely help hint at where a lot of this stuff is sourced from. Again, we're going to talk more about how this drives with this engine setup in just a bit, but before we can do that, let's take a look at the interior and the tech. All right, inside the Alfa Romeo, let's take a look around. All right, first off, we'll kick it on, and the start-stop push button is actually here on the steering wheel, not on the side where they kind of usually are. So we'll push that in. And kick it on. And before we look at some of the tech here, let's go ahead and look at the trim. So we do have these really nice black leather seats. You can see the Alfa Romeo badge there in the headrest, perforated leather. This is basically the top of the line option for the interior, and it looks really good. The rest of the interior trim is a combination of black materials and this textured gray material, and it might be hard to see on the camera, but that is a textured material. And then this trimming up here on the dash actually has LED lights behind it and will illuminate at night. And it's multicolor. Surprisingly, not as distracting as you would think it would be. It's super dim, but looks pretty cool. And Alfa says the entire interior here is inspired by Alfa Romeo's racing history, so it's very focused on the driver, and it's a bit cocked in, facing the driver more than the passenger. I can say that's probably correct. Let's start off by looking at the 10.25-inch infotainment system. This is the exact same that you get in the Dodge Hornet. So it is running a version of Dodge's Uconnect, but it's a super good system. You've got quick menus for things like your heated seats and heated steering wheel, ventilated seats, your AC controls. You've got a quick pull down menu where you can see things like your surround view monitor. You do have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto integrations, and it is wireless Apple CarPlay. We do of course have a wireless charger down here as well as a USB Type-C and USB Type-A charging ports. And these do allow your phone to interface with the Uconnect system. We also have a 12-volt accessory plug, and of course a nice Alfa Romeo badge down there. Below the screen is your AC and heat controls. Really nice, easy to touch. But for our heated and cooled seats and heated steering wheel, the only way to get to those is through the screen. Right here is our drive select mode. We'll get back to that in just a second. But first, we do have a traditional gear shift here. Putting it into reverse does bring up that full 360 camera system. You have your volume and on-off switch for your infotainment system, an electronic parking brake. You have your parking sensors that you can turn off, your parking assist that you can turn on, and then your e-save mode, which you can turn on. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that e-save mode does as we drive the vehicle. Of course, cup holders, armrest, nice and padded. Good console down there. Our steering wheel is a nice racing inspired steering wheel, and you have huge, almost absurd paddle shifters back behind. No buttons on the back side of the steering wheel like a lot of Dodge and Chrysler vehicles would have. But of course you have your array of buttons here on the steering wheel. And then of course your 12.3-inch driver digital cluster, which can be changed through. And you got a couple of different screens to look at here. Pretty nice, but not super customizable. Then of course you do have the sunroof that does tilt and fully open. It's not really panoramic, doesn't go all the way to the back, but it's a nice size and definitely opens you up to the elements. So there's not a ton here in the interior. Might seem a little lackluster, but I quite like it. I like the more minimalistic feel. A lot of features are buried in the touch screen, which can be annoying, but once you get used to it, is just fine. So that definitely makes the car feel more focused on driving. And before we get it out on the road, let's go ahead and go back to this drive mode selector and quickly talk about those modes. So drive modes for Alfa Romeo are called their DNA drive modes. D for dual power / dynamic, and we'll switch it into that. You can see your suspension here has been adjusted. You can see the dash update, and you can see it here on the infotainment screen. Next you have N, which means neutral. So it's kind of just the everyday driving mode. And then your A, which is advanced efficiency. That's going to give you the most efficient driving, basically keep you in EV as much as possible, deaden the throttle response, things like that. So we'll put it back in neutral driving mode and let's get it out on the road. All right, so it is a pretty sophisticated drive system that we have. So there's a lot to talk about in the drive. First off, we're in e-save mode, which I briefly mentioned is a button down here. If you caught my Jeep Wrangler PHEV or Jeep Grand Cherokee PHEV video, both of those plug-in hybrid systems have different modes that they drive in, and one of those modes is EV Save. This allows you to run the gas engine only and recharge the battery as much as possible. So you're getting less efficiency, but you're saving that charge on the battery for another occasion. For the Jeep, it's mainly about off-roading. So as you're heading to a trail, you can save that battery for when you get to the trail. This one doesn't quite have the same use case, but if you're going back and forth to work and you're up on the highway where you're already gonna get a little bit better gas mileage, and you want to save as much battery as possible so that you can go in EV mode in your neighborhood, you can do so. So we'll turn off EV Save. We'll go into our most efficient drive mode, the A mode, and we are now in EV only mode, which again, you can go up to 32 miles on just EV if you're at full charge. It's telling me now that we have 4 miles of full charge that we can go in EV mode. And you can really get up and go and it will stay in EV mode the entire time. If you really push on that accelerator pedal to really try to start going, it will kick on that gas motor, but for the most part, it will function like an EV, which is great. And one of the best things about plug-in hybrids. One of the worst things about plug-in hybrids is that you have to plug it in to get a good charge. If you're relying on the EV save mode, you're kind of wasting the efficiency. And if you're driving it in hybrid mode, where it's using the battery and the gas engine, you're going to drain that battery, and it's almost never going to be charged unless you plug it in overnight. So it's a bit of a compromise, but it's a compromise that I think is worth it, because again, if you do charge the battery, you can go up to 30 miles in all EV, and a lot of trips are under 30 miles. Like we're doing 36 miles per hour right now, still in full EV mode. We still have 4 miles registered as what we can go, and we're doing just fine. And then if you run out of battery, you have the gas engine to back you up. So plug-in hybrid systems I am a fan of. It's kind of a great medium between a fully electric vehicle and a gas vehicle or just hybrid vehicle, where you have no control over the battery and going full EV. One downside of that is that this thing has an 8-gallon fuel tank. So your total mile range with the 30 miles of EV and whatever you get out of your 8 gallons of fuel isn't that great. It's definitely under 400 miles. So even with the hybrid system, you might be fueling up more than you thought, but each time you fill up, it will be cheaper because you're not putting a ton of gallons into the tank, if that makes sense. So we're still in full EV. We've ticked down to 3 miles. About to get up to a faster road and see how this goes. Still in all EV, pushing it. 40 miles. 50 miles per hour, still in all EV. Gas hasn't kicked on at all. So it's a good system for a plug-in hybrid system, but I do have a complaint about this particular system, and the bigger complaint is the gas engine. So let's go back into neutral drive. Now we're in hybrid, so we're still in EV mode, but let's kick on that eSave. So one of the things that I noticed is that the gas engine in this doesn't sound sophisticated. There's not a lot of sound deadening to it. When you're in eSave mode and the recharge kicks into the battery, there is a pretty loud, low drone in the back seats. I noticed it myself driving, and the kids complained about it when we were driving as a family. So it's annoying, but not 100% a deal breaker. But I also did notice that the difference in driving and noise in this vehicle with it loaded down with the entire family versus me driving it by myself is drastically different. It seems like it's a lot noisier when I had the family packed in here, so the engine seemed to be struggling a lot more. The suspension also seemed to struggle a little bit more, as the vehicle felt a lot more wobbly, even at times feeling a bit out of control. And some of that comes to the higher stance of this with having some body roll and probably not a super sophisticated suspension system. But driving it by myself, you don't feel as much of that. It feels a little bit more planted and manages bumps and things like that easier, but definitely having it packed in with the family, it felt a lot more sluggish and a lot more wobbly. That being said, let's put it into dynamic mode. Can already feel it getting ready. We'll take it on some kind of tight turns here. See how the body roll is. And again, in dynamic, the power is there. Body roll's not terrible. It feels pretty planted, but you can definitely feel that it's a taller vehicle. This is not a sports car. It's also not super quick. do have some turbo lag when you really put your foot down, but it can be fun for sure. But as that suspension gets stiffer, it also feels, again, like you're driving a vehicle with stiff suspension. So the bumps are a lot more harsh, but it can be fun. We'll test out that 0 to 60 time as well. Let me get on a back road with a good straightaway. Now again, we do have these large paddle shifters that really kind of get in the way more than they're useful. If you're really pushing this hard or take it on a track for some reason, I'm sure they're really good because the more you turn, they're always kind of in your reach. They are mounted to the steering column and not the steering wheel, but if you're using your turn signal, they do kind of get in the way. Just something to be aware of. All right, and here we are on a nice back straightaway, nobody else around. Come to a dead stop. Ready, set, go. $60. Felt pretty good. It doesn't like slam you back in your seat. It's not like driving an EV. You get a little bit of instant torque thanks to that rear mounted electric motor, but you also get turbo lag from the front motor. It's a decent combination. Again, doesn't throw you back in your seat, but is pretty powerful, can be pretty quick. We'll put it back into neutral mode and talk a little bit about some of the safety. So you do get systems like adaptive cruise control, traffic sign recognition, intelligent speed assist, blind spot and rear cross path detection, forward collision warning with auto emergency braking and pedestrian detection, driver attention assist, and a rear seat reminder, and then lane departure warning and lane keeping assist. And these systems are good. Probably not the best in the industry, but they're pretty decent. My only biggest gripe about all of that is that the controls on the steering wheel aren't backlit. So if you're not super familiar with where everything is, if you're trying to set your cruise control or your lane keeping assist while driving at night, it can be a little bit more difficult as it's kind of hard to see those buttons. Again, some of that is just not being as familiar with the setup. So as you own the vehicle, I'm sure it will be better and better, but it is what it is. For the controls on the other side of the steering wheel, they manage both your infotainment system and driver information system, which can be confusing. So you do have to push a button to toggle to your driver information system, and then you're working with it. But if you wait too long before you make your next move, then you'll end up changing radio station or something over here. So again, after owning it for a while, I'm sure that gets more second nature, but after just a week of driving it, it can be a little bit confusing. Of course, you're going to want to know about the fuel economy. We've been averaging 29.4 miles to the gallon, which isn't super fantastic for the class of vehicle that it is, but we really haven't been using it to its absolute max potential. If you constantly charge the battery and drive this thing in fully hybrid, EV mode included, and not using the EV save mode, it has an EPA estimated rating of 77 mpge, which of course sounds a lot better. But again, you really got to charge the battery constantly and drive this thing more efficiently to get anywhere close to those numbers. It's kind of the same in all plug-in hybrids. You're going to get more fuel efficient because it's a hybrid, but to get the max efficiency, you really need to drive it almost like an EV. So with all that said, the next big question to ask is, how much does this thing cost? Let's go ahead and find a place to pull back over. We'll talk about the price, a little bit about the competition, and then we'll jump out and wrap up the video with some of my final thoughts. Let's just get into it. All right, guys, let's talk about the price really quick and some of the competition, of course. The base Tonale, the Spirit, has a MSRP starting at $43,655. 43 grand for these looks, not bad at all. You're getting the same engine spec, you're getting the same plug-in hybrid system. So I think that's pretty decent. The one we're sitting in here, the top of the line, has a starting MSRP of $47,495, but with the few options that we have, plus our destination charge, Our full MSRP for this vehicle is $57,450. So that's close to 60 grand. And for me, that's quite a bit of money for this class of vehicle. Of course, when you start comparing it to what it competes with, it doesn't sound too bad. The TI trim being the mid-level is the mid-ground on kind of where you might want to be. Probably be the most sales. You are looking at competition including the Audi Q3, the BMW X1, and the Mercedes GLA. None of those are really offered in the plug-in hybrid setup, so you're going to get better efficiency in here. And of course, this does have class-leading horsepower, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's better driving with better driving dynamics than any of those others. And unfortunately, I haven't personally been able to drive any of those on that list, at least not recently. So I'll reserve judgment on that. But I'll give you some of my final thoughts on this, the Tonale, but let's jump out and wrap it up outside. All right, and like I mentioned at the beginning of this review, I went into this super excited about this vehicle, even after driving the Dart and not being too blown away by it. This one with the different power plant, being a plug-in hybrid, which I'm completely in favor with and really like. I still left my time with the Tonale a bit disappointed. I really like the exterior design. I really like the interior and the tech that you get with this. But for the price, I wasn't super happy with the powertrain, with how it drove, especially when you weigh it down with the family. It's kind of in that category where it doesn't know what it wants to be. Is it a utilitarian vehicle? Is it a sports vehicle? Is it a family vehicle? It doesn't really do any of those great. So again, a bit disappointed, but still not totally opposed to it. Again, if they come out with more trims later, put a different engine setup in it, tweak the suspension, tune the handling, make it a bit cheaper, I could definitely see this being a really serious vehicle. And with that, I hope you did enjoy the review. If you did, please hit the thumbs up button. Leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you think about the Tonale. Let me know what you think about this plug-in hybrid setup that it has. If you're not already, go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you're into automotive reviews. We do a different review every week. You should also go check out txgarage.com, where we do a lot of written reviews as well as event and news coverage over there by a lot of great authors, not just myself. Definitely worth subscribing to the newsletter. But with that, that's all we got for this one. Thanks for watching.